nation, right? So I would definitely like Dr. Satish to respond on that as well. And then there are critical reflections on how development strategies can unintentionally perpetuate inequalities, where we look at development itself as a problematic conception, what it means and what it does to larger society, right? So that's a very brief description of the book. Right, with that, I think we should start our Q&A. Is that okay, Dr. Satish? Yeah? I'll give a very brief bio of Dr. Satish. So Dr. Satish Chennur is an assistant professor of sociology at the Center for Studies in Social Sciences, Calcutta. He has earlier taught at TIS Hyderabad. He teaches courses related to sociology of development, institutions and identities, land and development, social mobilities and identity studies, offering courses such as critical caste studies, right? So he specializes in sociology of politics and regional historiography. His research interests include the interaction between caste, region and polity, especially in South India, while establishing the vital links between caste, the political economy of agrarian growth and the social history of regions, both rural and urban. More specifically, his area of specialization includes social history of regions and sociology of development, political sociology and institutions based on social identities. He has an upcoming book which is to be published by Routledge, and it is titled Caste, Region and Politics, Dynamics of an Intermediate Caste in India, right? So, very briefly about Dr. Satish, right? And then I would like to pose some questions to Dr. Satish, and if you would like to respond, we can have this discussion for around half an hour, 40 minutes. Then we can open it up for a public discussion, right? We have our students, colleagues from Sister Nivedita University. So I would encourage our colleagues to participate in the discussion as well, our student to participate in the discussion as well, right? So in terms of inequalities, Dr. Satish, what is your observation on the conception of inequalities in BRICS countries, particularly that of India?
Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. It's to speak here on this platform. It's exciting and also slightly some sort of boy mela is a big thing for every Bengali. So coming from outside Bengal and being part of this boy mela, it's really exciting, and I'm also slightly nervous. That shouldn't stop me to say what I have prepared. I mean, the idea of BRICS is a very novel concept. To address this question, we have to slightly go back to mid 20th century. So, say 1940s onwards, where there are two different camps started emerging. So, one camp from North America, another camp from Russia, USSR. So broadly you have USA and USSR playing with every country possible. So from the beginning of 20th century, say you have World War I, Great Depression, and then World War II. So because of all these things, many countries started economically becoming weaker. USA started becoming more prosperous. Everybody felt that capitalism is going to stay there because everyone there is getting prosperous over a period of time. Around this time, USA started thinking to outreach, thinking to push its supremacy on every other country possible. So, say by 1960s, you have President like Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher in UK started thinking about developing countries saying that look, all of you are underdeveloped, so we are here to develop you. So another form of colonialism started coming in. Okay, that was the time. So people like Ander Gunder Frank, Gustavo Estava, Emmanuel Wallerstein, a section of sociology started articulating about these changes taking at a global level. So this is broadly they called it development theory, right? So this is one set of thing. So the key aspects of this changes were that there are certain countries which are developed, there are certain countries which are not developed. There are certain countries which are not developed. Okay, so two different sets of nations have emerged around that time, and sociology started interpreting these changes quite keenly with the help of people like, say, Emmanuel Wallerstein interpreted this center metropolis, okay, center satellite, okay, you have developed and underdeveloped. Okay, so this is one set of changes one can see. I mean, the emergence of BRICS, I think, have certain roots somewhere here, right? So there is another stream of theorization which took place within sociology was global sociology. Say with Michael Burawe, unfortunately he passed away recently. So Burawe started saying that sociology has the capacity to interpret at a global level without getting disconnected from issues. Okay, so say for example, extended case method, global sociology. I mean, Burawe was quite keen, quite active in African countries. He graduated from Zambia. He was quite closely following South African School of Sociology. So this is another set of theoretical stream emerged from sociology. The third one I feel is BRIC sociology, which came in 2000s, closely following with the developments at international level, at economic level, where this person from Goldman Sachs wrote this piece in 2000s saying that, look, developed nations should be very careful with certain countries which are emerging. Okay, so say countries like Russia, China, India, Brazil, and then later on, couple of years later in 2011, South Africa was also included in this. So what is the important aspect this O'Neill mentioned in his article? Okay, he was, even though he is part of Goldman Sachs, which has some controversial history, but then the point he was mentioning that there are similar patterns of growth emerging from these 4 or 5 countries. Their problem seems to be more or less similar, economic problems. Their growth patterns also seems to be uniformed. Okay, so despite having issues internally at say particular level, but if we expand this scope, say at an universal level, these countries seems to be sharing each other's qualifications. So that is how the idea of BRIC sociology has emerged. Now, okay, this is one aspect. The another aspect is that what sort of a role inequality is doing. Okay, so so theoretically, if we see the metamorphosis of BRIC sociologies or historical background of BRIC sociology, very important aspect within this BRIC sociology is inequalities. So sociologically or from a Marxist point of view, inequality is a very important phenomena. All these countries have similar apprehensions or share similar values towards inequalities because they're all having similar economic growth, economic patterns. And that's what Neil was also saying, that by say end of 21st century, so 2050 one country, 2047 another country. So by the end of 21st century, all these countries might in one way or the other challenge the developed nations. Most importantly, USA. That's what China is actually doing quite effectively. So this is all economic side. Theoretically, one can understand. But when we pitch this idea of inequality, immediate question is that how do we address inequality question? So the sociologically there is a wide literature present addressing this issue of inequality. So say within India, I mean you and Patel wrote a very interesting chapters in this book. So one very interesting aspect of inequality here in within Indian sociology is that there are two important streams emerging. Okay, so equality, and if you posit equality against what? Okay, so in sociology we have people like Deepankar Gupta, Surinder Singh Jyotka, James Manner. Okay, so a set of scholars who are trying to understand the issues within Indian society through equality question. There's also another set of scholarship which has emerged quite effectively from the beginning. Scholars like Aloysius, scholars like say Nicholas Dirks, who emphasized hierarchy. Okay, so I would like to see this book, even though book is basically engaging with this issue of inequality, I was trying to understand it, that the authors have mentioned very clearly about social justice. So social justice is nothing but another synonym to hierarchy. Okay, so I'll stop here. If there's another, then I'll add more points to it.
Yes, for sure. Thank you very much for that response. So you brought up very important issues of, what is global sociology. And in the foreword of this book also we see Professor Sari Hanafi, who is the ex-president of the International Sociological Association, where he also talks about global sociology, right? And given the international situation of politics right now in terms of geopolitics, where we see that we could very well say that North America and Europe is going through a turbulent time. How do you see the relevance of the BRICS countries coming together, and in terms of an academic project like BRICS sociology? Because what is going to be its impact on global relations, if you could focus on that, and then we could, focus on the Indian case.
At this moment, I think we are in a flux. The global relation seems to be too complex, so there are no camps like the way we used to have in 60s. So are you in USSR camp or are you in USA camp? That sort of a situation is not there. There's no what do you say, that who belongs to which camp. So especially when you have people who are heading the institutions who are quite uncertain, like eclectic, it is very difficult to assess the nature of global relationship, right? So amidst this, countries which are progressing on a rapid base, though, these countries will surely have their effect on developed nations who are trying to, be ostracizing, developing this ostracizing nature. Like, okay, so that sort of challenging other nations can be kept aside with countries like BRICS, followed by you have 11 countries. Okay, there's also discussion taking place to include 11 more other countries. So a platform like BRICS will definitely challenge G6. So it is already, people say that we have Vishwaguru, Russia is challenging day-to-day activities at global level, China is dictating, shifting the nature of this dictatorial voice. So it is, what do you say? So it becomes quite imminent to have organizations like BRICS to challenge the hegemony of G6. Yeah.
If you could explain to everybody here what is G6.
Yeah, G6 are basically a group of countries who are developed. Okay, so if we go by the economic parlance, say which are developed, so developed nations like USA, UK, Germany, and then yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that, and definitely, we have different kind of academic understandings of the non-hegemonic world. It is named as a majoritarian world. It is looked at through the lens of post-colonial studies and all of that. And then we also have something called Southern epistemologies, right? So what do you think is the importance of BRIC sociology in terms of coming up with new sociological conceptions for studying these countries, societies of these countries, and if you could give an Indian example?
I feel this idea of southern northern seems to be coming up in recent times. So scholars like Nikita Sood have written a very interesting piece on this idea of southern. But then it is still at a budding stage. Theoretically, it has not been explored much. So it is also another important concept to address issues. Okay, so the fundamental aspect here is that individually to address issues at a global level. I mean, do you do it at an individual level, or you develop a collaborative, or you associate with other nations who are also undergoing similar issues. So sociology also comes here quite effectively, because this sociologist, German sociologist, I'm sure you are aware, Ferdinand Tonis, mentioned this Gesellschaft, communities and associations. So sociology by far basically engages with not just at an individual level, but also at a community level. So countries which are facing similar issues, experiencing similar problems at a global level, are trying to collaborate with each other. So keeping that in mind, this idea of southern has come out, but it is still not in a position to acquire that status, a status where say NATO has acquired, or status like G6 has acquired. So but I'm sure it is going to play an effective role in near future, like the way BRICS is playing right now.
Yeah, so for example, in terms of, the conceptualization of sociologists like Boaventura Sousa Santos, where he talks about southern epistemologies, and this is also a question from Dr. Govender, who sent this question to me, that, how do we kind of think in terms of a relational paradigm when we are thinking of both BRIC sociology and southern epistemologies?
Again, to speak broadly about the relationship between BRICS sociology and southern epistemology, so I would like to bring, say, Marxian epistemological question, where space seems to be playing important role here. Okay, so southern is juxtaposed or posed against north. BRICS is or in BRICS, so they have some spatial structures, not just spatial, but the space is addressed in collaborating with socio-economic structures. So it's not just spatial thing. So because all these countries they're vast in nature, their population is quite effective in terms of delivering resources. I mean, their population itself is a resource. Not just that, that space is also posed as an important event, or or it looked as a in relation with socio-economic structures. So in that way, brick sociology is going to have an affiliation, have an organic connection with southern epistemology. All these countries have experiencing similar connotations in terms of economic, in terms of social spaces, or importantly, cultural capital. Yeah.
Right. So here I would like to ask you, you spoke about space, right? But if we take into consideration, the intersectional lens, we know from theorists like Kimberly Crenshaw about intersectionality. So that possibly, is very helpful in understanding Indian society, right? Because it's a very diverse and it's a very complex society. So then along with space, I guess if I've understood you correctly, here you are mentioning space as a category, right? So then with the other categories, how can we problematize inequalities? Inequalities, a conception of inequalities.
When I said space seems to be playing an important role in bringing these countries, I was basically bringing Marxian theory, especially Lefebvre, David Harvey's thing, that relational understanding. In other words, this idea of relationality, I mean, when they spoke about absolute, relative, relational, so the problems people who are facing problems in these countries, they are not just unidimensional. So they are also multiverse. Say, I mean, in other words, scholars like Sandra Harding, Crenshaw, that critical race theory, all of them spoke about intersectionality. So your problem is not just structural; it is also normative. It is also historical. So problems are a combination of several categories. So that's how one needs to see this whole idea of bricks thing from an intersectionality point of view. But I slightly stepped out from that language and brought Marxian theory. In this book also, I mean, lots of scholars have touched, many chapters have addressed this issue that look how, so say there is inequality issue. So what is the other language to be used to understand this inequality issue? Should we use social justice, or should we bring social organization as an important thing? If we bring social organization, how is it different from, say, the regular non-Marxian engagement? Yeah.
Right, thank you very much for that. And then, we have some budding researchers, students also here. So in terms of brick sociology and doing research, in terms of doing research, what would be your suggestion to young researchers engaging with the discipline of sociology or engaging with the social sciences through an interdisciplinary perspective?
It's slightly...
We have a PhD student here from the Department of Sociology.
It's slightly a tricky question, but I'm also still learning. So learning is a continuous process. I feel one has to be curious, that curiosity should continue, persist for a longer period of time. I mean, one needs to challenge us over a period of time. But the important point I feel here is that in the age of so much of repression and people are not interested in higher educations, state is the role of state is increasingly getting involved. Private players are coming. So what sort of a role, especially in social sciences, humanities, which doesn't have so much of market value, so how do we hold our interest? So and there's also an important dimension emerging here that, look, traditional disciplines are not able to address some issues. So therefore, subfields, subdisciplines, like brick sociology is emerging as a subfield. So interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity is, I think, becoming an important field. In private universities, you don't have humanities per se or social sciences. There is liberal arts. So how do we actually cope up these changes? Changes emerging from within India, also coming from outside. So if one needs to be keen aware of changes developing, uh, yeah. So post 90s, due to neoliberalization, there are significant changes have come. So if we are not keen aware of these changes, I think we might get trapped in the market logic.
As in, you mean the social science subjects?
Social sciences, yes.
Right. So then you are speaking about neoliberalism, and my following question would be then, how do you see the role of the state in terms of, mitigating or reducing inequalities in the BRICS countries?
In BRIC countries or in India?
Specifically, the Indian case would be interesting for all of us to hear.
In India?
Yes.
Yeah. Indian state has a significant role to play in addressing the question of inequalities. How far it has addressed is an interesting question. But Constitution has played significant role in addressing this inequality question. But the important question, as I mentioned earlier, that in Indian context, there is still a debate between inequality or equality or hierarchy. Okay, so a set of scholars are trying to understand this as a social problem. This social problem has been addressed from, say, equality, you mean, wealth equalities. Okay, so the social equality component might not come here in equality debate. Right. On the other hand, scholars who are posing questions related to this social problem, they pose it from hierarchy point of view. So, say affirmative action is one such to address this social problem, or creating jobs is one. Okay, for scholarship who are coming from equality point of view. So state is actually trying to balance between these two, but I feel still it has so much to do. But the role of civil society is also significant in terms of pushing the state to do its role, its responsibility. Yeah. 70 years of independence, I think, has addressed this social problem not so significantly. It's my personal opinion. But then one shouldn't be disregarding the role of state in addressing this issue. It has certainly intervened, but not up to its capacity.
So here I would like to ask, where is our roles as students and teachers of sociology to push the state? How can we push the state? How can we bring in more positive and progressive policies? And what should be our role as students and teachers of sociology towards bringing in, progressive changes in society? I believe that we are still a dynamic society in India. The RG Kar incident in West Bengal probably showed us that we are still not a dead society, which is a ray of hope. It is still a dynamic society, and every society ought to be dynamic, because otherwise, it becomes a dead society. So then, what should be our contribution towards perpetuating or preserving this dynamism of society?
Constant interaction with the state through various levels in various capacities. So civil society organizations should play, civil society per se should actually be active, vocal, addressing, raising issues, pertinent issues, challenging state. So like not making state dormant, making state to perform its duties, push its limits constantly. Not necessarily you have to be a student or a faculty or an intellectual, but one can actually challenge the state or raise questions against the state in various capacities. Mm, uh, at some point of a time, you can also slightly defy. So in presenting this problem, so it's a continuous, constant exercise, or a dialogue with the state. Okay, because because we have actually elected, we have kept them there. So it is also their responsibility to address these issues. Sometimes they might not, so we will actually push them, make them to do. Uh, so in recent times, several issues have come up in challenging the state, in questioning it through various capacities. I'm sure, I'm sure Indian citizens are in that position to challenge, but one also needs to see what is happening outside India. Sudipta Kaviraj was actually mentioning this point that look, when Arab Spring can happen there, and several protests have taking place outside India. Why not in India? So he was mentioning this, that Indian national movement was last post that we haven't actually witnessed any such mega event, challenging the power. So he used this term passive revolution. But I'm still optimistic that we can address these pertinent social issues with the help of state.
Right. So then we also see social movements and the relevance of social movements in bringing forth progressive change in society, right? So, and as students and teachers of sociology, we also study social movements. So in terms of brick sociology, then this book also gives us some examples of social movements. What do you think is the role of social movements in today's society? And we have younger people also passing by, listening to us, they are Gen Zs. So, what do you think is the role of the Gen Zs, or let's say, how can we motivate the Gen Zs in terms of, engaging with issues which impact their society? Because I'm sure you would agree, there is to an extent a sense of disillusionment, among the younger population. So, while doing brick sociology, how can we address such disconnection or dissociation of the younger generation from their own societies?
I'm not so sure about sure whether I can actually have a I mean, I can comment on Gen Z, but see the genealogy. I mean, if you go back to this idea of social movements, say right from independence, we have a long history of social movements. Right, say farmers' movements in recent times, or Archikar in recent times. So people are coming together. So it's not just that civil society in India is dormant. It's so there is, I feel, a hope is still there, irrespective of which generation you fall. So the response is is intact. So to fight against the state, to fight against the power, to fight against the dominant ideas. So to fight against dominant ideology. So I think that spirit is evident. It's
Okay, so then my next question would be related to knowledge production, knowledge generation and circulation. So we live in a post-colonial society. Indian society is a post-colonial society, and we know that, the education system to a large extent has a colonial legacy. And the formal education system kind of replicates the British system, and it was introduced by the colonizers in the late 19th century. So the thing is, through BRIC sociology, how do you think we can, as we say, do epistemic justice, do away with epistemic injustice? If you could enlighten our audience members in terms of what is epistemic injustice, and through new conceptualizations, what could be the contribution of BRIC sociology towards that in terms of knowledge generation and circulation?
I was reading this book, especially your chapter on childhood, and also Dr. Patel's chapter on community radio. I find both the chapters are quite interesting. So, what these two chapters? I mean, I was reading from an outsider, from a different lens. So, one, that colonial knowledge production has significantly changed the mindset of Indians. Okay, permanently, for at least for a longer period of time. Say the vocabulary, like you were citing Bandyopadhyaya, the vocabulary they have used to address children coming from various social backgrounds, Choto log, Bada log. So that we have continued for a longer period of time. So irrespective of which generation, which period. Right, this is one thing. I mean, Bernon Khan also made this very interesting intervention in terms of what sort of a role colonial knowledge actually intervened into the minds of Indians. Say, administrators, travelers, Christian missionaries, or colonial anthropologists. So different sets of information coming from or Orientalists. So each set of scholarship brandized India in their own way. So I mean, Bernon Khan mentions this to Indophobia and Indomania, right? So Christian missionaries who came here, people like Charles Grant, understood Indian society quite differently. Or the Orientalists, Indologists, who were actually holding big positions like jurisprudence, judiciary, they saw India quite differently. So the way they saw India, the way they perceived India was different. Which different in the sense that it is depending upon their social cultural background. People like Charles Grant have come from a troubled background. Okay. That's not the case with other scholars. So this is one set of information. Having said that, while reading Patel's article, I saw that look, even though this cultural hegemony is intact, it is flowing, but there are certain punctures. Okay, so say small interventions, community radio. Okay, so if material resources is an important indicator of inequalities, Patel's argument is that community radio seems to be an important intervention. It is coming from the women, especially, like in Telangana, Deccan Development Society has initiated this, so that women can interact with each other, nearby villages. So this is an important initiation coming from women who were largely kept outside from power structure. So it's an important intervention. So there are interventions like this now and then, even if not constant, but these interventions have actually significantly challenged the say supremacy, masculinity, or state hegemony. Yeah, that's what I feel about it.
Right. So I think we are coming to a conclusion. So before we conclude, would you have any critical reflections about this book? What did you find was very useful for the discipline of sociology, and what would be the contribution of this book in terms of doing future research?
I should accept it. I couldn't finish reading this book. It was last minute thing. But I have read chapters from India. I also read introduction. I tried to read chapters from South Africa. I mean, this book is quite important intervention into the study of, say, brick sociology. Around the time of subdiscipline, I mean, we are seeing the age of subdisciplines, subfields, like critical race theory, critical caste studies, development studies, you have women studies. So you have so many subdisciplines emerging primarily because the traditional disciplines are not able to address some of the issues. That's what Sharmila Regge talks about. Wendy Brown wrote a very interesting piece on the challenges in starting a discipline called women studies. So I can also see that brick sociology is developing to be a subdiscipline. It is going to be an important source for scholars, students who are working in interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary issues connected to various social issues. I mean, this book particularly engages with inequality question, ranging from education, so childhood, sports, so leisure. I mean, this book also dedicated to primer of leisure studies. It's a very good intervention for graduate students, research scholars, or faculty members who are working in interdisciplinary or even traditional disciplines, sociology, anthropology, and other such. Having said that, I would like to mention this point because I've read those two articles, both your article as well as Patel's, Dr. Patel's article. I find your piece quite interesting. So it's a different, it has opened up a different world altogether. I don't actually pay much. I'm not. I have not read much literature on childhood studies. So my research area is caste, region, and politics, or institutional history. So when I was reading this piece, I find quite interesting that how childhood plays a significant role, especially if you come from marginalized sections. Okay, so if you come from a religion which is always, so when you brought religion, when you bought caste, when you bought space, so it was quite interesting to see. Usually in Bengal, we talk about the absence of caste, but in your piece you also have significantly brought it by saying, in fact both of you, so that how Choto, the term, actually resonates, or it stays with you for a longer period of time. So that point I really liked. The other piece, Patel, Dr. Patel's piece, for a longer period of time, Habermas' concept to understand public sphere was the thing. But in recent times, it was thoroughly challenged. I mean, not just Nancy Fraser. Lots of people have challenged it. Gopal Guru wrote a very interesting piece recently. Sundar Sarukkai, Gopal Guru, both of them have written a very small piece, how space play an important role in perpetuating caste. And then unlike Habermas' understanding about public sphere, which is universal, here Gopal Guru through Ambedkar tries to argue that public sphere is not a universal concept, it's not a homogeneous concept. So Gopal Guru was bringing Ambedkar's autobiography, Waiting for a Visa, that's Ambedkar's autobiography, where he eloquently mentions his experiences, experiences like going to one palace, or staying in one house, in Parsi house in Baroda. Okay, so some of his experiences were very, very fearful. I mean, you cannot imagine that somebody like Ambedkar actually had to undergo these issues. Ambedkar couldn't enter into spaces where he doesn't belong to. Okay, on the other hand, what Gopal Guru does is compare Ambedkar's spatial experiences with Gandhi's spatial experiences. Gandhi could reach anywhere, go to any extent. That's not the case with Ambedkar. So by bringing this to Guru tries to theorize the idea of space, public space, which is quite different from Habermas. So this point also I really liked in Dr. Patel's space. I must thank you for giving me this opportunity, calling me, and so I took this opportunity to read this book, at least if not full, your chapters. Thank you once again for giving me this wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for this discussion. It was a very engaging discussion. I'm sure all of you would agree. And then, yes, BRIC sociology gives us that framework, It gives us a theoretical framework. It gives us that lens to do research and think of future studies or projects in terms of bringing in the interdisciplinary lens, right? So we do have some audience members here with us. So if anyone would like to ask any question to Dr. Satish, please feel free. Language is not a barrier. We could ask in any language and then we can translate. We also have Ronita here with us, who's a co-author, Ronita Chattopadhyay, who's a consultant in the development sector. So please feel free. We have extra microphones here. Anyone, if you would like to ask any questions.
Hello. Am I audible?
Louder, please. Yes? Yes, louder, please.
Hello.
Yes.
So I was.
Can you please face the camera?
Oh, okay.
You can sit here.
Thank you. So before I was listening to your discussion, and you said you were talking about Gen Z. So I was just wondering that what incentives do we give the society that they can go forward and criticize the state or talk about the things that the state are doing wrong right now. And I think if we think about incentives, then that becomes a motivating point for everyone. So as a quote by Charlie Munger, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And so what's that?
Thank you for asking me that question. So my answer might slightly disappoint you. I think society doesn't function based on incentives, first thing. Secondly, motivation, there is big difference between motivation and consistency. So like motivation might actually take you a further couple of steps. Okay, so it might not be the end, right? So it is also, people say that duties and rights, right? So if you are seeking rights, you also have to perform your duties. So these two are part of constitution. So if you are claiming one, you also have to think about the other one. What are you giving? What is your, as a Gen Z or as an academic, as an intellectual, so what are we trying to, instead of expecting, that's how I see. There's also this saying, if you start expecting, you will also start disappointing yourself, right? These two are basically two sides of one coin. So I feel each generation have a role to perform, right? So what is that role that one, I'm not putting the burden on the individual or on the Gen Z. It is also societal responsibility to cultivate that responsibility. So it is, even though it is individual's responsibility, but the institution role is immense. Family as an institution, academic institutions, their role. So it's a constant exercise to make the individual not liable, but also some sort of accountable towards themselves, at the same time towards a larger society. Uh, I mean, Gen Z might not like this sort of a thing. They say that, look, we need some fuel to push. Okay, so
If I could just add, if you look at the examples of our neighboring countries, what has happened in Nepal, in Bangladesh, and last year we saw Gen Z-led youth protests all around the world, right? Right from Southeast Asia to Africa to different places. And they were talking about very mundane, everyday issues like water, electricity, and all of that. And they were demanding it. So, I don't know whether Dr. Satish would agree with me on this point that probably, in India, we take our independence for granted. Our generation, the younger generations, we did not have to fight for it, right? So we take our independence, our freedom for granted, I think if we start taking it a bit seriously, things would look different.
Yes.
Thank you. Your next question, please. You had another question.
So I wanted to ask, which would act as a better society if we expect that the citizens will be good, they will do good things, and fruitful things will come, or if we set up the rules in such a way that human beings will act in a selfish way by nature, and we have to make certain rules so that they cannot. We have to provide some incentive that I also asked in my previous question, that they should not. I would like to add another thing. One of my very interesting subjects is game theory. So, game theory, yeah. So, if you could talk something about that.
Before Dr. Satish, if I could ask you to please introduce yourself.
I'm very sorry I didn't already. My name is Kingshuk Shah. I'm currently studying for government exams, and I've passed Masters in Computer Application from Brainway University.
I mean, it's not possible to address social issues through game theory, but some of them have done. I mean, because social problems are, they're all processes, no? So there is no end to any social problem. It's a constant evolving thing. So in social sciences, when we write something, we don't write, say, conclusion. Okay, so a social scientist is not the first person or the last person to study a problem, a social problem, right? But the nature of the problem might change over a period of time. Say, if you see poverty, the metamorphosis of poverty. Okay, so you say a generation before, the definition of poverty is different, but now the definition is different because it's relative. It is not it is not fixed, rigid, right? It's constant, it's evolving. So I mean, that's how I think we should see any problem as not as a static, as a rigid one. It's evolving. I mean, the idea of good is also a very relative term, right? You have these Stoic philosophers. So one Stoic philosopher was holding one lantern during daytime, roaming in the streets of Greece. And then someone asked him that, why are you roaming here with a lantern during daytime? He said, I'm searching for a good man. Okay, so that's how Stoic philosophy understood the idea of goodness. But it's relative. I mean, I'm not philosophizing the problem, but it's relative. The thing which is good for you might be, these are all values, right? So society sees values, community sees values differently. Each community has a different value towards this good, bad. Yeah.
As different communities have different values, and so they visualize the good and the bad differently. So there cannot be any objective like good or bad. That's why there is this concept of inequality and all the other problems that are arising. Are you saying?
Sometimes state intervene. State has that capacity to say that, look, that's how rules are. We framed rules like to have some common understanding about what is this, what is not good. So uh, uh, to move out from those so we have developed our own rules to govern ourselves, right? So yeah, at some point of a time, state keeps coming in as a like checks and balances, right? So one cannot do as they wish to do, even if one thinks it's good. But the role of society, the role of state, all these different checks and balances keeps coming in. So this is what sociology does all the time. That is it individual agency which should be given prominence, priority, or the structures, right? So sociology says that, look, I mean, people like Anthony Giddens, Pierre Bourdieu, okay, so in 1970s, by the time we came to 70s and 80s, we started thinking about the, it's not binary, we should actually pay more attention, not individual or structures in the sense, say, institutions, family as institution, marriage as institution, bureaucracy as institution, so police as institution. So what sort of a role we should, whom we should give in preference, individual agency or structures? So by 70s, these people have started overcoming from this binary, saying that no, we need to have these two to have a good, meaningful. So Giddens used this term structuration. Bourdieu, a French sociologist, used the term field, capital, and habitus. So these are theories to understand society in a much better way. Which so how to make our lives better, how to perform socially better, something at a social level, which also cultivates the individual's agency more effectively. It's a two-way process.
Yeah, because problems are ever evolving and you cannot have a single solution. Right? Thank you very much.
If I could add to that, the thing is, now we are also talking about planetary sociology, right? So then we imagine ourselves as one humankind, right? Vis-a-vis many societies and many communities, right? So then what are our human values and what are our morals? Because what is at the core of being a human has emerged and is emerging as the most important question of 21st century, where humanity is at a crisis. There are so many wars and conflicts and differences all around the world, right? I think your concerns come from that, what should I say, that disturbance, right? So the point that binds all of us is compassion, and so how do we cultivate that? What do we understand by that? And actually, where do we want to take our society to? That should be our vision, right? And that's where we probably go beyond our own very small selfish spheres. You started off with that.
I think we would have lived in a perfect world if everybody could understand everyone else. But that is not the case. That is not the ideal, is not the real thing. But as I see it, through internet and more and more technology, I think we are coming towards each other as a society. Some might call it like we are going towards being a hive mind. So I think it's like a positive view from my side that one day humanity, the differences among us will be minimized and we can live in harmony and peace.
Right, it's about focusing, right? Are we focusing on our differences or our similarities? We are as similar as we are different, right?
Postmodern theory says there is nothing called perfection. All of us are imperfect people trying to improve ourselves. When you say that, when you say perfection, you are aiming for a moving bird. You're trying to hit a moving bird. So, which is slightly difficult, but we still try. So, perfection is like that. So, we have to keep improving ourselves.
Just before I go, I'd like to ask just one last question. I must be boring, but you said that all of us are trying to improve ourselves and we are imperfect. What if some of us aren't trying to improve ourselves regularly and consciously, and that ignorance ultimately leads to inequality?
Yeah, if I could respond to that, as sociologists, the response would be what drives that person to that state, what happened because of which this person is in this circumstance. So we don't take a judgmental or biased understanding of things, but we try to understand why this person is responding in this manner. There must be some reasons behind it, right? And what are the nuances? So we are here to study those nuances and to kind of understand the complexity of the situation. Any other questions from anyone? Thank you very much for the engagement. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Yes, please. No, please take the microphone. Please take the microphone.
Okay, so, 1973, 1973, Amartya Sen wrote a book on inequality. Now, actually, economists started thinking on practicalities of the inequalities when in 2008, after the global economic crisis, okay. After that, you see, lots of discussion on economic terms came by Thomas Piketty, Thomas Piketty capital. Now, I just, as an economist, my question would be that globally, debate on inequality by sociologists is bit following that theorization of Amartya Sen further, because he was making the case that poverty is not enough to study. Inequality you have to do. And by 2008, crisis came, right? 1:99%, like that. No. And then what you have now globally, inequality has reached to a political system where right. So right wing, crony capitalism, all are in the surge. Right? Sorry. So in that way, my question would be that is therefore sociologists studying the inequality bit kind of late vis-a-vis for us economists?
I don't think so. So, in fact, I feel economists have paid so much of attention to the economic aspects, like financial issues related to an individual or a society. On the other hand, I think sociology, I don't say right from the inception, I mean, say Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, all that, keeping all of them aside, at least from the beginning of early 20th century, sociology was basically trying to understand economic life of an individual, right? You talk about Max Weber. Okay, so Max Weber, even though religion is an important aspect for him, right? But then it was economy. Okay, so his book, one of the magnum opus, is Economy and Society. Okay, so Charles Wright Mills and H.H. Girth, both one German, one American sociologist. What they did was translate Weber's work into English and then publish in US, right? Or say Karl Marx, Marxian theory. It's to do with economics. But economists, the discipline economics took away the economic aspects of an individual and started paying more attention to it in an uniformed manner. This is coming from a sociologist. So, you have this disciplinary, I feel, rivalry, but a sociologist has always kept economy, okay, along with other important structures, social, cultural. Okay, so delineating economy from social and culture might not give a holistic picture of an individual. So it will give partial, half-hearted story. So that's what I think sociologists have done. Say the important book on migration, which came from Chicago sociologists, right? So Polish Peasant, that book Polish Peasant, published by Chicago sociologists. It's basically trying to understand economic organization of a Polish migrant who have come from Poland to USA, right? So Thomas and Zenecki, these two people, okay, W.I. Thomas and Zenecki. So this is going to be a never-ending discussion, because who actually think, but yeah, this is what I feel, that by disciplinary wise sociology, I think, try to bring this social, cultural, economic, political together and try to understand the processes, interactions, unlike economists who only paid more attention to economy.
Any further questions? Ronita, do you have a question, a comment?
Thank you so much, and it's been really very enriching to hear the discussion as well. There's something that it's been kind of troubling me also, is the sense that, we use a lot of these categories, gender, sex, and there's also now increasingly insider-outsider debate that is happening. And increasingly we are also seeing the present being used as a lens to kind of retell the past. Like how people are looking at their legacies and their identities increasingly. So in that sense, I wanted to know, like especially with, say, BRIC sociology, and like with such dynamic societies where so much change is happening, so much churning is happening, like where do we stand with these categories of, like how we define people into these categories, which could be gender, class, caste, how do you see that changing in our current context?
I think BRIC sociology is an important intervention in challenging these traditional categories, right? So, caste, class, gender, okay, tribe, location. So these are all traditional categories which have been for a longer period of time, many disciplines in social sciences or humanities, we've been engaging with these categories. But I feel these subfields,
say brick sociology, critical caste studies, or critical race theory, women studies. So when these disciplines, when these sub-disciplines come out, they bring non-traditional categories. Say for example, critical caste studies. One of the very important intervention in critical caste studies is that recognition or redistribution. Okay, so they don't talk about caste or equality. So for them, they bring recognition. Is say a caste is raising their voice for what purpose? Are they actually seeking recognition, or they are actually having a problem with ill distribution of resources? Okay, this is one aspect. Okay, so second one is hermeneutics of suspicion, hermeneutics of faith. If Gandhi is having a very intense engagement with Gita, a positive intense engagement with Gita, on the other hand, Ambedkar is having apprehensions about Gita. It's the same text. So no one is talking about religion, no one is talking about Hinduism, nothing. It's a textual studies. It's a non-traditional understanding about some issue which traditional categories also were engaging for a longer period of time. So newer languages have come, intersectionality for example. So it's not just one category through which you try to understand social problem, but it's amalgamation, right? So I feel global sociology, public sociology, critical caste studies, development studies for that matter, moving away from development practice, so development theory. So all these new interventions will actually create more avenues, more categories, so that we can understand these issues much better way than the traditional categories were addressed. This is one, yeah.
Yes, I would just like to add that there is a word called dialectics. So it's through that dialectical lens that we get to understand society in a much more nuanced manner, right? So it's the job of a sociologist or a social scientist to understand these nuances, which otherwise gets lost, So how do we understand these nuances? Brick sociology gives us that framework, So, and as Dr. Satish was mentioning, many of these newer field of studies like women's studies, childhood studies, they are per se interdisciplinary, right? So they are looking at one particular social reality, but looking at it from various new angles and also opening up new angles to study one particular social reality, right? Any further questions, comments?
This other question, this other question that looking at the problem, contemporary problem as it is, or going back and seeing it from historical, it's a very interesting and intense question. I think we need some time to think about it, historical, contemporary. So I think we should pay more, it needs more thinking.
If I could add, within sociology, the mainstream discipline, there is now something which is called historical sociology, and at the International Sociological Association, we have RCs, the research committees, right? So there is one RC which is completely dedicated to historical sociology, which is, just to say that you cannot understand the contemporary without engaging with the past, right?
And also how we are using our present to define a retelling of the past. Like it's about how it's co-constitutive. I find that very fascinating. It's kind of not a very linear kind of progression, and increasingly in the times that we live. So I feel that's a very dynamic and a very, kind of a engaging context for us to also be aware of.
Right. So then Dr. Satish spoke about speciality and you're talking about temporality, right? So how these two aspects come together to kind of, give us an understanding of social reality. Any further questions, comments? We are almost at the end of the discussion. We have had a very engaging and thoughtful almost 2 hours. So any further questions, comments, observations? Anyone? We have students with us. No, then I think Dr. Satish, we could conclude the session. Is that okay? I'll just, do some formalities, which is we have a very small something from the university for you, so please accept this. And a vote of thanks. So if you please allow me to go through the vote of thanks. Yeah, so thank you very much for accepting this invitation, and that too at a very short notice. So we are extremely grateful to you, and it was an honor and privilege to have you with us here today. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the audience members, students, colleagues, people from the public who have engaged with this discussion and, asked us some very thought-provoking questions. So we are very thankful to the audience members, each one of you. And then the SNU team, has been fantastic. The technical team, the support team, thank you very much. I would like to extend my thanks to the Department of Sociology, SNU, to my HOD for supporting this event, and a special thanks to our Pro-VC academics, Dr. Madhumita Guha Mojumdar, for her constant encouragement. I extend my thanks to the Dean of the School of Humanities, Languages and Social Sciences, SNU, as well for the constant motivation. A special thanks to the Department of Mass Communication, SNU, for all the logistical support and coordination at the IKBF. And last but not the least, my sincere gratitude to the offices of our Honorable Chancellor, Shri Shottam Roy Chaudhuri, Pro-Chancellor, Shri Dhrubajyoti Chattopadhyay, our VC Sir, Shri Shonku Bosh, Pro-VC Admin, Shri Shupratim Sen, and our Registrar, Shri Shumanto Basu. Wish you all a very good evening, and see you all at our SNU campus. So thank you very much for this discussion. Thank you for being with us, and stay safe. Bye-bye. Good evening.